Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies, leaving a wife with no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman but died childless. Then the second and the third married her. And likewise all the 7 died childless. Finally the woman also died. Now at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 had been married to her." Jesus said to them, "The children of this age marry and remarry. But those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels. And they are the children of God, because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise, even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called out, 'Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.' And he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive." The Gospel of the Lord. If you've never spent any time in the books of Maccabees, and you have the stomach for it, I'd suggest you go back and read chapter 7 from the second book of Maccabees when you get home to it. Maybe especially for our confirmation students. We have really edited the version of this martyrdom account for the sake of having something G-rated for the liturgy. But what these men went through was a lot worse than what we've recounted today in this reading. So that's chapter 7, second book of Maccabees. Maccabees, Sadducees. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection. So they're mocking Jesus' worldview that we will rise from the dead. Since they believed all there was to live for was this life, they could only imagine when Jesus spoke of the resurrection that he meant that we would rise again in the same form that we have now. Not actually the way Jesus rose in a glorified way. So when they're picturing this hypothetical situation with the 7 brothers and the woman standing around in the resurrection like, who's her husband? You know? It's not going to be that way. You can only imagine what problems that would have caused if that was the way it was to be. But Jesus also reminds us in this passage that the sacraments are for this life, for the sake of pointing us to the next. But the Sadducees' view on life was somewhat limited. And not to bash them, but it seems like maybe they weren't open to a resurrection because it would force their viewpoint to something beyond this present life. And many Sadducees were tied to the temple priesthood and were also wealthy merchants. So if this was all there was to live for, they were doing pretty well for themselves. In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of that monologue from Shakespeare's As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. A sort of melancholic view of life. You live your 7 stages, and then you pass off stage and go away. But you can almost feel a yearning for meaning beyond this present life, even if you go through the rest of the monologue. But that sort of viewpoint doesn't even begin to tell the story. Men and women don't just play roles in life and then go away. Imagine attending a play, and say you get to the intermission. You know, did what happened previously in the play cease to exist? Do the characters that have come before within the performance not still remain in some way? And has what has yet to come what's going to happen in the second, what do you call that? Second act. There you go. Can you tell I wasn't a theater major? Has what is to come not in existence because it hasn't been performed. No, the whole play exists as one reality, even though it's in the midst of its performance. The writer has completed the whole script. The director is orchestrating its production, and the characters are all alive, whether they're on stage or not. So from the perspective of those in the audience, while the present scene is maybe most accessible, it's the whole play in its entirety that makes the most sense, not just isolated scenes. Now step into the world of the actors. What makes them most free to perform the play? It's when they've studied their characters, learned their lines, when they have become one with the role they are to portray, that they have the freedom to play that character within the performance. They're not free if they're doing whatever they want, if they make up lines, if they change the scene, if they stray from the intentions of the writer or director. If they go too far off script, there would be chaos. What would it mean for the actors who came before them on stage and the actors who are to come after them if one decided to alter the script? Wouldn't it ruin the show for all involved? And even worse, if a large number of actors in a particular scene rewrote the script while everyone else was trying to act the play as it was written and directed, you have a bit of a problem. The tone taken in Shakespeare's monologue is far too melancholic. The whole monologue can be summed up as follows. We're born to live our stages of life, and then we die. And it seems like each individual's life is its own play, going on simultaneously and interacting with everyone else's. But it's too individualistic. The world is a stage, but we are actors in the single greatest drama ever written, the story of God's love for his people. God has written the script and is directing the play, and we all have our roles to portray. The storyline being that God has created us to love and be loved by him and each other. He's even written himself into the story as the lead character who comes to save his people. God wants to play the hero for his sons and daughters. There are lines, there are characters. We learn ours from the scriptures and tradition as revealed through the people of Israel and the new Israel, the church. And we're most free when we learn the script, when we trust the church, who helps direct the play we live. To trust ourselves in opposition to that script, to the church, is to cause chaos. I mean, that's what sin is. And we have all at various times gone off script, and in some ways threatened to ruin the show. One of the dangers of any age is to become isolated from the past, with no clear look to the future, to believe that we know better than those who have come before us. And that's what's happening in our first reading from the book of Maccabees. Some of the Jewish leaders said, why are we breaking our backs for this old law? We had it better when we lived like the pagans, so, let's be like everyone else and everything will be fine. They were going off script, wreaking havoc on those who were trying to remain faithful to God's word. But who had more freedom? The ones trying to force pagan practices on the Jews, or the young men who refused to succumb to the pressure to live contrary to God's plan of love for his people? We are ready to die rather than transgress the laws of our ancestors. These martyrs knew the script. They had faith in the plan of God as it was lived out by the characters who led up to them, and they refused to be responsible for messing up the show because they know when the play is over, They will encounter those who have gone before them, those who have been faithful. And what then will they tell Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the prophets? But all of creation is more than a stage. It is still an analogy. And we're not merely actors in the show. How we live and what we stand for means so much more than that. But all the more important that we don't isolate ourselves from the plan God has for the world, His pursuit of us in love, our history, and those who have gone before us, and those who will come after. And ultimately, the end of the story, the resurrection from the dead. So all that being said, where did you get your copy of the script? Is it from those in the world who have already rewritten it according to their own liking? Or does it fit the plan that God intended? Who are your ancestors? Are they the giants in political parties, legends of sports, celebrities, or the gods of popularity? We cannot remain isolated from the past or the future. The foundation on which our principles lie can't be founded on a whim, a feeling, an emotion, or human loyalties that are changeable. They must be founded on truth. And if we abandon the story that leads up to now and leads to the resurrection, if we trust ourselves over and against the church who safeguards the story, what will we tell our ancestors when the resurrection dawns? St. John Paul II, St. Therese, Cardinal Newman, St. John Vianney, St. Charles Borromeo, Teresa of Avila, Catherine of Siena, St. Francis, Clare, Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, St. Cecilia, Mary, Peter, the Maccabees, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ruth, Esther, Moses, Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, Noah, Adam. They're off the stage, but they're alive yet. When we reach the end of the story, when the resurrection is upon us, what will we tell our descendants, those who take the stage after us? We didn't know better. It seemed like a good idea at the time. It felt right. We didn't want to be inconvenienced. We didn't want to get picked on. The political party had a convincing platform. I don't know. Sometimes we get so fixated on our own time and place in history that we can't see the past, or we can't trust the past. We can't see the future either. The coming of the new heavens and new earth, so as to inform how we live our lives today. It's just easier to see our own time on stage apart from the rest of the show. But we can't forget that we're part of a larger drama, one that God has written for us. It begins and ends with His love for us. There are characters from the past and a script that comes through the church that we can trust, and characters in the future that we have a responsibility towards. And we look forward to the future, to the resurrection, when the whole cast gathers together in God's love, recognizing that according to His plan, this was the greatest story ever told.